What's up, everybody, and welcome to E-Commerce Masters. I'm your host, Ethan Giffin, CEO of Groove Commerce, and I'm excited, very, very excited to be here today with an awesome guest, Vance Ryan, who's a senior solutions architect at Shopware, and we're going to be talking about all things B2B today. Remember, this is a video-first podcast, so if you want to see what we're talking about on screen, head on over to our YouTube channel at Groove Commerce and give us a subscribe, give us a like, give us a comment, do whatever you can. We love it, we love it, we love it. And if you think you'd be a great guest on the podcast, don't hesitate to reach out to me on socials and let me know who you are. So welcome to the podcast, Vance. How are you?
Hey, Ethan, doing well, doing well. How about yourself?
I am good. I am so good. I'm excited for you to be here today. I love talking B2B. I always love talking to you. You've got such a great depth of experience across the whole industry of kind of front house, back house, like a little bit of everything, or front office, back office. You've got, all the things. So I really look forward to today's conversation talking about Shopware and B2B.
Well, thanks, Ethan. It's great to be here, especially with esteemed guests or esteemed hosts such as yourself. Really appreciate the invite. So thank you.
Thank you. Have you ever had a Ginger podcast, host before? Have you ever, or is this your first?
I think I think this would be the first time for me.
All right. It's a first time for everything. So, welcome. So just to let the audience know, why don't you tell us a little bit, how did you get into commerce? What's your background? What was the journey like to getting to where you are today at Shopware?
For sure. Yeah. I actually kind of fell into commerce, as it just so happens. It was second semester, senior year. I didn't have a job yet. I was like, I should probably figure out, get me one of those, so I have something to do next year. And there was some on-campus recruiting events for a company called Digital River. And I started, went there, had the interview. They asked me some of the most unique questions. Really, really liked it. I thought I was going to do finance, but ended up in ecom as a business analyst at Digital River.
Was that a mistake? What do you think? Like, if looking back, should you have gone finance? Like, where do you,
Turns out I was not smart enough to do any of the finance stuff. Like, I had no like aptitude for macro or micro econ. So it all worked out really for the best.
I think about all the people that went into commerce, went into SEO and all the things. Like, I'm probably in the second generation of folks that got into that, and we're all kind of like a bunch of hobos. And it's like hindsight after watching Billions and all these other shows and Succession, I probably should have gotten into private equity or something. But here we are, doing a podcast talking about commerce, all things commerce.
Well, see, I actually thought it was pretty good because when I started, I was one of my best friends went and worked for JP Morgan right out of college in New York, and I remember doing the cost benefit or the cost breakdown of like the per hour wage, and I was actually making more than him, so I put that in the victory pile. So.
Yeah, when you're living in New York as that entry level associate, you get to eat half your ramen, for dinner, and the other half the ramen pack for, lunch the next day is kind of where you're at with all that. So that's funny. It's funny. I mean, you've got a lot of different experience, right? I mean, you worked on the ERP side. Now you work on the platform side. You worked on Digital River side. Like, I'm curious, did you guys listen to like Justin Timberlake, Cry Me a River? Or was that like your theme song when you all worked there?
It was more Tina Turner, Rolling on the River, actually, I think.
That's great. That's great.
Somewhere out there's a video of me doing a lip sync battle to that song at a Digital River event, I'm sure. But yeah. So I went to Digital River, got my decided to go back after a certain amount of time. I moved from business analyst right over to solution architect track after about 9 months of being there, and I got to work on some of the best most amazing customers that you can imagine: Adobe, Autodesk, VMware. I was the main architect on the Digital River side for Adobe's CCT, Creative Cloud for Teams product, and so for their integration with their ecom platform anyway. So it was a really incredible experience, incredible time, and then I just completed my master's. I went back and got my master's from the U of M, Minnesota. For those of you who are think there's another U of M out there, which lots. And I was like, well, I should probably do something else. And I was looking around, found a gig at NetSuite, managing a team of devs. So I went over there and worked on the professional services side of the house, managing like 26 devs. And then I missed the call of e-commerce. People think I'm crazy, but e-commerce is sexy. I think e-commerce is sexy, and at least it was when you compare it to ERP for sure. So
Every time, you think you're out, it pulls you back in,
pulls me
right?
back in.
You know,
Yeah, exactly.
it definitely does. I mean, there's like when I got into commerce, like for me, I was into heavy conversion rate marketing. I was into SEO. I was into analytics. This was all kind of back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And there was nothing better. You could track, you could take something from a nickel click on Overture, right? And for a pay per click back then, it used to be a penny, by the way. Then it went to a nickel. And then you could watch that click come into an e-commerce site. You could track that with analytics, and you can see within 1 or 2 visits somebody making a purchase, and you could count that checkout conversion and be off to the races. It was, that there was just like the full circle was there, and really just allowed you to kind of feed your ego, so to speak, with that of like, it was like, oh, how do I do better? How do I do more? Like, how do I increase that? And so it was a very, very fast turn from visit to customer.
Well, that's still the most important thing, right? At the end of the day, if people aren't checking out, you're not making money. So those analytics are still probably one of the most important things on any e-commerce site.
Yeah, yeah. So we had, a previous guest was Jason Nyes, the GM of Shopware America. We had a fantastic conversation talking about Shopware just more generally as an option for mid-market merchants and brands and manufacturers. But today I want to talk a little bit more specifically about B2B, right? It's, a space that isn't getting enough attention. There's still a lot of manufacturers around the country that haven't done anything in terms of creating a buyer portal or any of that, right? So how does, tell me a little bit about Shopware and kind of position it from a B2B standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess the background is that it started in Germany, right? So we were founded by two brothers in Germany back in the 2000s, actually. So we're celebrating in 2000, I should say. So we're actually celebrating our 25th year in
Oh, cool.
January. But one of the things specifically about that is that we've kind of grown up and we've become kind of the default e-com platform for Germany. So about 25% of all online revenue in Germany goes through Shopware. And so with that, as you can imagine, in Germany there haven't been these massive players like Shopware was and is. And so we were the default choice. So we grew up with both B2C and B2B in our DNA. And so we've kept that trend going, and that's really an area that we focus on majorly. We're doing some major investments into in the future into our B2B offerings, B2B things, the features that we offer to folks, specifically because we see it's such an underserved market and such an important market. And one of the things I love about Shopware too, we have 50,000 merchants globally. I'd say about 60% are B2B, 40% B2C. But in 2019, there's a kind of an inflection point in Shopware's history where we were doing an analysis of the code base and kind of the feature development and what it was taking. And it was taking more time than we were comfortable with it taking for us to do just code maintenance on all of when we were doing the updates, releasing new features, that sort of thing, on our old version, Shopware 5. And so we made the decision, I think, about 2017 and finally released it in December 2019. So that'll be 5 years, I guess, now. To release Shopware 6. And so Shopware 6, API first, and that's been a beautiful thing as far as our code development ethos. Everything has to be done with an API, and the admin has to be an API. Front end, there has to be API support. Everything has to be API first, and we've been living that methodology, and it makes it just so much easier to use, so much easier to build on top of and extend, right? Because we know that we're going to give you a good structural base for every B2B thing that we can possibly do. And there's always going to be something that you might need to tweak just a little bit, and we make it as easy as possible for that.
Yeah, I love the API first mentality. I mean, even thinking about Magento 2, I mean, I would have to think about my days as a Magento partner. That's what all my gray hair came from, by the way. Gingers aren't supposed to get gray hair. But I'm thinking like Magento 2 was started way back in maybe 2012, 2014, something like that. And it took them, a significant amount of time to finally deliver that. And it was full of bugs. But Shopware came out of the gate much more stable, a fantastic piece of software to build on top of. You can create innovation by integrating with APIs and both on the front end and back end, right? Like both on the front end website that the customers see as well as within the admin interface as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a I'd be lying if I said we didn't have a little bit of a benefit of a second mover in that regard. We watched what Magento did with their migration from Magento 1 to Magento 2, and we decided to go the other path. And I think that definitely has paid the dividends. But yeah, to your point, uh, one of the beautiful things about Shopware being so open and being API first is that it does enable a lot more configurability, a lot more customization possibility because there's always an API backing something. One of the things I love too is just even if you need something custom and you build a custom entity, API first is so ingrained in our ethos, we'll automatically create APIs for you to use when you create a custom entity. Like that's how extensive we get with it, which is I think great and super super helpful.
Very cool. So who, if you're a manufacturer, and you're thinking about creating a B2B buying portal, if you're looking at starting even direct to consumer commerce, maybe to sell your products, like where is Shopware a fit? Who is it a fit for, and who isn't it a fit for within the e-commerce ecosystem?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that you mentioned Jason already. One of my favorite quotes of his is Shopware has a major in we majored in configurability and flexibility. And so anyone who really has kind of unique capabilities that they want to have, or anything that they have that's custom or makes them unique, makes them special, you're probably not going to get that. That's probably not going to be built in. If it makes you unique, it's probably not going to be built into a SaaS platform, just because the SaaS platforms are designed to serve the masses, right? They're designed to serve a bunch of other folks. They're not going to necessarily be able to do exactly what makes you unique. And so really anyone that has any sort of complexity, they need some customization, some configurability. That's really where Shopware shines. If you're a pretty basic direct seller, you have a limited number of SKUs, limited number of geos, those sorts of things. There are great platforms out there that would serve you really really well. And also if you don't have you know just I guess a quick little anecdote here I think is an analogy here. Growing up, my dad had a lot of other stuff that he was doing. So whenever we'd go on a big trip, he'd always use a travel planner, right? He'd
Right.
always like hire a travel planner. They'd plan everything for us. They'd have, it was great. We'd show up. We'd go show up at the airport. Our tickets would all be done. We'd get there. We'd have these predefined tours we were going on, all this sorts of things. But it was a really really good experience. But everything was made for us. Now I met my wife and her mother, or my mother-in-law. Her mother is an amazing, amazing woman and is so passionate about trips. So whenever I traveled with their family, no travel agents were involved. She knew our family, what everyone wanted to do. There was always personally tailored to us. The travel agents, not disparaging them at all, they do a great job. But they never got to, they can't possibly know us as well as my mother-in-law could. And so she'd build out these amazing trips, like the most amazing trips. We had this. We cooked a dinner in Croatia, overlooking this stunning valley in this like little hut, right? Like nobody else was there; it's just us. And the point of the story is that you're not going to get that with a travel agent. The travel agent is going to have something that they've built and they've made opinions and they've made decisions for you that are going to appeal to their the broad masses, and that's a SaaS platform. But if you want those kind of unique, special experiences, you got to kind of do it yourself and figure out what's going to work for you, and that's not going to be necessarily a SaaS platform.
Yeah, yeah. So
Sorry, little side.
no, no, no,
post
no,
here.
no. And just to kind of further clarify that for our listeners, so while you do have a cloud edition and you can host Shopware in the cloud wherever you want, it is software that you can bring your own host. Basically, if you want to host it internally, you can. If you want to host it in the cloud, you can. Or if you want to host it through a specialized provider that specializes in Shopware hosting, you can host it there. But it's different from Shopify and BigCommerce and other cloud products where it's more on premise, so to speak, talking in kind of old school phrases.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's a lot of flexibility there too. I mean, we have some merchants that are just allergic to AWS because they view Amazon as a competitor and they don't like paying their competitor for something. So they can host in GCP, or you don't like GCP for whatever reason, maybe because Google, whatever, host in AWS or Azure. You can pick your superscaler hyperscaler and host it there if you want. Or as you mentioned, we also have our own cloud offering or a whole host, pun intended, of service providers as well.
You also have a pretty open framework and a ton of apps or add-ons, right, that you could install into your system. Can you talk a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like every ecom platform out there these days, we have an app ecosystem that people can contribute to. So there are folks that can you can list your app, your plugin if you want to, and list it for sale in the Shopware marketplace. Um, so there's a ton of extensions there. I'd say a lot of technology partners are listing their own apps there. Things like Avalara, Vertex, all these sorts of things. They're all listing their own versions of these inside our store, our extension marketplace, if you will. Not all of them cost money, of course. There are quite a few free ones. So yeah, there's lots of flexibility there, and that does also give another layer of choice of picking. I think, just as an example, we have 7 or 8 different bundle plugins, right? So you can pick if you want to pick one over the other. It gives you some flexibility of choice there as well.
And then what kind of size merchant is generally a good fit, or what size manufacturer is a good fit for something like this?
Yeah, so there's a Shopware itself. The software can handle pretty much customers of any size. I think there's a little bit of a differentiation between what we can host and what we can handle, and then our ideal kind of customer profile that we're
Right.
targeting. I'd say generally speaking, we're hyper focused on the mid market, right? So we're hyper focused on marketing to those folks that have been largely ignored or abandoned by kind of all these platforms that are going up market or down market. And so our focus is that mid market. Within that, there's some the classical definition of what mid market is, which was usually kind of a GMV band. I think the most classical one or most common one was somewhere like 25 to 500 million in GMV. Um, I think we like to look at it a little bit differently, not so much as revenue, but more on complexity, right? And kind of the needs of the merchant that identifies them as more of a mid-market merchant as opposed to just because some of these folks are doing billions, but only a fraction of that's done online, right?
Right.
So I think
Right.
the important thing to distinguish there as well. We're not gonna classify you as an enterprise if you're only doing 5 million online, even if you're doing 2 billion in
Right.
revenue anyway, right?
Right. 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 And I guess, one of the questions I have is like, does it integrate with like tools like product information management systems or PIMs? I know that's something that especially bigger manufacturers or bigger global groups of companies have PIMs that kind of support all of their product catalog.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key phrases I like to steal a lot of phrases from people as I go along the way. So one of the ones from our former head of developer experience that I really like is Shopware was designed for merchants to be able to use this for as much as you need and as little as you want. And I think that's really, really powerful. So things like PIMs and CMSs and DAMs, right? All of these three-letter alphabet soup systems that we've created in the ecom space. Uh, because we're API first, we're ready to integrate or pre-integrated with all of them. So, you know, I'd say PIM is a super common one. ERPs is another huge one, especially in the B2B space. A lot of times, folks will have complex pricing that exists in an ERP contract pricing that's specific for Ethan. You get this particular product for $9.99, and me as a general just guessed I have to pay $13.99 for it, right? I mean, things like that, all that contract pricing stuff like that, that all typically lives in a third party system. And so by Shopware being API first and API native, we're ready and we have integrations with those sorts of systems.
Well, I think
That's
that's
kind
a
of our bread
good
and
like
butter.
lead in. Kind of the next question or thought is you mentioned ERP. You come from an interesting background. Like you worked at NetSuite, right? Like you've got in depth information of what the ERP world is, and I would say that most of the B2B companies we work with maybe have NetSuite or Acumatica or Epicor. Some have AS400s that we integrate with, like all types of data is coming from all types of places. Why don't you talk a little bit about connecting an ERP up into Shopware and kind of the complexities of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, speaking from my experience at NetSuite on the professional services side, uh, granted, it could be adverse selection because I only saw people that were making changes, but On that professional services side, I got to see a lot of the configurations and different ways that people use NetSuite, and it's pretty astounding when you look at it in depth and see more and more the ways that folks use these SaaS products as not truly SaaS, but they really customize the crap out of them and make them not really so much the out of the box feature set that they have. So I'd say that anyone that tells you that they have a direct connector to NetSuite that's going to automatically work out of the box is not really telling the truth, or it's at least half truth. Every ERP integration is going to have something. It's going to have something that's going to be different. Might need to be tweaked, might need to be configuration, but there's something different about the way that every customer is using every ERP, more or less, I will say in my experience anyway. So, things like being able to have the flexibility to say, hey, like Shopware does, we have, hey, this webhook event framework. Whatever event happens, we are not going to make the assumption that you need, that we have this pre-packaged defined event structure that's what you need. We're going to give you every event. You can pick which ones you need. And you can pick what you need to update your system on. And so I think that's one of the things that's kind of crucial and key about Shopware is that making that so flexible and giving the data to the system and letting the system make the determination, or the customer make the determination on which data is important, is really, really key. Because like I said, everyone uses their own, every ERP integration is its own special snowflake.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we've done 10 or if we've done 12 Epicor implementations, they're all different, right? Like the only thing that's similar is the name, right?
Exactly.
It's, or Microsoft Navision or, all of the above. They're all just a little bit different based upon what the business rules are and, how they need to be integrated, what the data looks like, the timing of the data. Are you refreshing your pricing multiple times a day? Or are you doing that once a month or once a year, right? Like there are all of those kind of things come into consideration when you're doing an ERP integration.
Well, and Epicor itself, even just the Epicor has, 20 some different ERP products that they offer depending upon your industry too. So even just having an Epicor integration, it's not really specific enough really to tell you what system you're working with.
Yeah, yeah. So, if a manufacturer's thinking about this, right, it's their first time through, like creating a buyer portal or a B2B ordering system, and they want to integrate with their back office, with their ERP. What are some things they should be thinking about or considering? Like what questions should they be asking when they're going through this process?
Yeah, for sure. I think the main thing would be ask your finance team for sure. With what
really?
data they need. Yeah. Everyone ignores the finance team until it's way too late. So make sure the finance team is happy because they cut the checks at the end of the day. So one of the top things I would say is make sure that you're checking with the finance team to make sure that they know, or which pieces of data are crucial for them. What do they need to see? So that way you can make sure that that's part of the integration. So that's point number one, I would say, as far as ERP integrations and kind of e-com integrations go. But then look for what's going to be able to meet your needs, right? What's going to be able to keep you operating the way you want to operate. Kind of like what makes you special? What makes you unique? What's the value proposition you can offer? Why is someone going to come to an online portal and pay for something from your site, right? Are they going to really do that, or is it are you mostly handling your transactions through sales reps today? And if you are, how are you going to make sure that anybody that comes to that site isn't just going to bypass a sales rep and the sales rep's not going to get commission, because then all of a sudden they have no interest in pointing people to the site, right? So your site becomes kind of irrelevant. So those are just a few things that I think are super, super key to think about, especially if you've never done this before. Is kind of like, how do you make your money? What's going to incentivize somebody to come to an e-com portal, and then make sure the finance team's happy.
Well, yeah, and how do you accept payments? Do you need tokenization of your payments so that you can authorize on the front end and capture in the ERP? Does none of that even matter because you're just doing POs or purchase orders, or are you granting credit to your customers? And what if they exceed the amount of credit? How does that work? Are they allowed to exceed the amount of credit? Are they allowed to exceed it by 10%? What's all of those things, all of those questions come into play. And we've definitely been in situations where maybe the CFO had been maybe there was they had departed and they hadn't brought a new CFO in yet. Like we've been in various situations on these projects, and it's, finance is a key part, and they need to be brought in from the beginning to be able to give a thumbs up or thumbs down on what they're doing. Do you want to be able to accept payment online for offline orders? Like all of the things are things that like we want to think about when we're looking at a project of this size and scale.
Well, and to your point, I mean, different payment methods might even have different, financial reconciliation rules around them, right? So you make sure that those are all aligned, and maybe your finance team doesn't want to offer terms or credit to certain people because of risk profiles or whatever the case may be, too. So, yeah, couldn't agree more. Get them involved early and often.
I'm a big fan of automation. And again, some of this comes from my HubSpot background of, their workflow tools and the ability to automate things. I'm a big fan of Zapier, however you're supposed to say it. I can say it with my Baltimore accent, Zapier. But it's, and you guys have a workflow engine as well for automation as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two tools, two features that we released that really put the power kind of for that control back in the hands of the merchant. So the first one being Rule Builder, and that's kind of I call that kind of the configurable business logic, right? So that's where you can build out conditions inside the platform, no coding needed. For this customer, and if it's this day of the week, and it's they're buying product from category A, all those different things. Those are all different rules that you can set up. And once you have those rules set up, then you can take it over to the second half, Flow Builder, which is kind of the configurable no code, low code business process. And so that's what you're talking about, kind of the workflow, where at any point in the life cycle of the customer visit. So from the customer logging in, the order going to a certain state, the customer changing their payment method, all these sorts of things, they can trigger. These are all events that trigger, and you can say, okay, if when this event triggers, if this rule is true, then I want to do this, and this. If it's not true, I want to do this, and this. Or if this rule is true and we have another rule that's also true, right? So it's the really truly if this then that decision tree that you can build out inside the platform without needing any sort of coding or customization. It's really a pretty powerful tool for doing those automation tasks, right? Assigning people to customer groups, adding metadata to the order if necessary for maybe VIP handling, or doing some automated notifications internally, notifying sales rep, hey, this is this customer just placed an order. You might want to check in on it because they're your account, sort of deal. So things like that I think are really really cool, and it's we show these features to merchants, and they get really excited because they see all these things that they've had to. In the past, they would have had to submit a ticket to a dev system or a product request, have it sit around for a couple weeks to a year to multiple years, and then they finally see it come out, and it's way too late. No matter what it is, it's always way too late. So being able to do that in the platform is really huge.
It's great. Are you able to trigger a webhook, or even receive like a webhook, from a third party system using these flows, or does that require more kind of technical expertise to put together?
Yeah, there is that great call out. There is a webhook actually involved in that as well. So one of the actions you can select is create a webhook. And you were talking about HubSpot. Actually, when I first started at Shopware, I think it was week 3 or so. They told me we were going to these trade shows, and so we were everyone has a booth, and they all have little swag, socks, whatever, cups, mugs, all these things that they give out. And we decided that we were going to give out nice vests and stuff like that. But we wanted people to actually go through the checkout process on a site, because we were like, hey, we're an ecom platform. We'll make folks go through a checkout process. And so we built that. They're like, okay, cool, Vance, I'm glad you like the idea. You go build that site. And I was like, sweet. I've been here for 3 weeks. Yeah, we'll figure that out. And part of that is after the show was over, they wanted me to go in and make sure became a logistics warehouse manager effectively. I had to go make sure that
Of course.
Make sure everyone got the thing they ordered, and make sure that all that information made it into our HubSpot as well. I was like, you know what? I bet I could use Flow Builder and I can automate some of this. And sure enough, I went through, and within about an hour, I just looked at the HubSpot API, created a webhook call directly to HubSpot, created everyone as a contact when they checked out. I got to use the rules to make sure that I could I could, make sure that they were legit. I did have to block our one of our partner managers, Justin. He loved trying to abuse the system to get free swag. So I put in a rule specifically to stop him. Shout out to Justin. Um, but yeah, it was great. It was super easy, super straightforward, and like I said, I did it after being at Shopware for about 3 weeks in about an hour. So
That's cool. And no salesperson is going to go type in the information and put it in the CRM, right? They're like,
yes, for sure.
you know, Chase ain't doing any of that nonsense, right? He's not going to do it. So you got to figure out how to automate that.
For sure,
We could sit and
absolutely.
talk. I mean, you work with salespeople all day, so we could sit and we could talk about salespeople, for the whole podcast if we really wanted to. But we'll save that for another time.
Another episode.
Yeah. No, but that's super cool. I mean, right? Like that's the name of the game is like, how do you like create these low code, no code situations where you can integrate systems together and tools, and be able to leverage that within your e-commerce ecosystem, right? Like you've got to have these systems talking together and working together to really reach that optimum efficiency, for what you're doing. One of the cool things that I like really dig that you've done, and I think it kind of came out of the COVID time, is these digital sales rooms that allow almost like, again, I'm going to not use the right words, but it's almost like an assisted shopping, right, for salespeople, for your B2B sales reps to assist with your customers, to buy and have certain focus in the catalog. Did I do that justice?
Yeah, yeah, totally fair. Yeah, no, it's to your point. It did come out of COVID. We have a customer of ours, the Wortman Group. They're the largest shoe distributor in Europe, and they have these B2B sales reps, right? And they go kind of store to store with. I don't know anything about fashion, so I'm going to be totally off on the timing here. But we'll just say they're going around with the spring 2025 collection, although probably way farther beyond that now. But they'd go around with the collection of shoes just in their trunk, right? And they'd unload it, set up their little display. B2B buyer would come out and say, okay, yeah, I want this, this, and this. Then they'd pack everything up, take that on the road to the next store. Um, Great, ability to see the person interact. That's so key. The relationship between the sales rep and the buyer, and that's something that I think we can't really discount. Um, and all of a sudden COVID hits, right? And the country, Germany in this case, is totally locked down. People can't travel anywhere, and so they're looking for a solution. And so they come to us and they say, "Hey, Shopware, can you really help? Can you help us out here?" And so we put together, yeah, digital sales rooms. There are multiple modes of it. It can be a guided sales rep experience, one to one, one to many, where a sales rep can help take somebody through. But the important thing to note is that it's not really just a catalog, right? It doesn't have to be the catalog of everything. I was joke and use that. Do you guys get the Uline out in
Oh
Baltimore? Is
God.
that
Oh
the
God. I
Uline
get like
catalog?
four. I get
Yeah,
like three
right.
and four of them.
So I have this. I have this as a prop on my desk now. This is 896 pages of just Uline stuff, right? It's all the stuff they sell. And so even if I was a buyer, I've never purchased anything from them. So I don't, Lord knows why they still pay however much it is to send me this catalog every month, but or every quarter. But I've never bought from them. But if I did, even if I did, and I wanted something specific from them, and that's what I bought, I still get 896 pages, and I have to leaf through to find what I want, and then I have to buy it from them, right? That's ridiculous and not practical. Like no, no. To your point, sales reps are kind of lazy. They're not gonna leaf through things and to find the products they need. And so what I love about digital sales rooms specifically is it allows the sales rep to curate an experience for a customer. So instead of sending the whole Uline catalog, maybe I only ever buy cardboard boxes from them, right? Then we can just show just a subset. And so here, actually, thank you. This pulled up. This is a perfect example. This is a video from the actual Wortman group. So this is a real life example. And so what you're going to see is in the top left, you have kind of the customer view, and in the bottom right, there's a sales agent view. And so this is, to your point, kind of a guided session where they're able to browse independently, scroll independently, but the agent is always able to guide them through. So the agent brought them to this page, page 15 of 22. And you're also going to see here that the agent is able to kind of summon the user. So they click a button, the user scrolls down to wherever the agent's talking about, pops it out for them, highlights them. And you're going to start to see too, the agent has all this kind of God level view of all the information. So the customer liked the product, the agent can see that. The customer was looking at that product, that red shoe, the agent could see that the customer was looking at it. So then the customer or the sales agent can go, hey, I saw you were looking at the shoe. Let's dive in. Let's talk about that a little bit more in depth, right? And so they click in, they bring the agent or bring the user to the product detail page. Now on the right side of the screen here, you're going to see that the agent has all of this information, right? So they have things like margin, stock levels, you name it, kind of all this information, even maybe just metadata on the product, talk tracks that other agents have used, right?
Mm-hmm.
All shoved into this product. And so the agent can see all that information and talk to the customer, and they don't necessarily have that same advantage, right? The customer adds something to the cart, the agent can see that in real time. The agent right now, this is one of my favorite features about this, is the agent's creating what's called an instant listing page. So, we saw that the catalog is 22 pages, massive catalog, right? In this case, the agent's maybe based on the conversation, maybe past purchase history, don't know. But the agent is actually just selecting a focused set of products that the customer might want. And now these products don't have to be from this particular page. They can be from any page in the catalog. It could be from outside the catalog. Doesn't matter. But the agent is pulling in just a small set that they think the customer is going to like. And you can see here too, the agent's actually able to act on behalf of the customer. So the agent is liking adding a few products to the like list for the customer. Again, or they can also add stuff to the cart on behalf of the customer. But now what the agent's going to do, what I think is really cool, is they're going to take them to the like list. So if you think about kind of an e-com funnel, a sales funnel, we started with this massive 22 pages of data, 22 pages of products. We narrowed it down based on the sales reps' insights on just the products that they think the customer will like. And now we're narrowing it down even farther, just the products that the customer's actually expressed an interest in. And I said before, this can be a one-to-one, one-to-many sort of deal. Every customer that's visiting this has the ability to have their own like list, their own cart, all that stuff. This can be either anonymous, it can be authenticated. In this case, it's authenticated. So when the sales agent takes the customer to the cart right now, there we go. All that information is already pre-populated. So, the customer might have net terms already signed. They might have a billing address, shipping address, all that stuff's done. Boom, easy checkout. And this has, all the main core features of Shopware. So dynamic pricing.
Yep.
Restrict catalog restrictions. You can buyer A can buy these particular set of shoes, buyer B can't. All of that is already built into the platform. We just released a few more things like on-the-fly sales rep discounting, the ability to share screens. So I mean, we're pushing this pretty hard. We think it's a really, really unique use case that really unique offering that really nobody else has. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it's super unique. I find a lot of value, especially if you have 30, 40, 50, 60 reps and you could teach them how to do this. You can identify 2 or 3 of your highest performing reps that are maybe a little technically minded and teach them how to do this. You could go gangbusters on it. And so in terms of if you're a manufacturer, maybe you have highly technical products with, lists of complex specifications and other information, Shopware can handle that, correct? Like those product fields?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's truly where we shine with, we have the ability to have spatial. So if you have your CAD models, you can actually even upload those into Shopware and you can have the specs and the actual 3D model rendered right there in line. One thing I want to just really quickly circle back to, because I think it's an important thing to note too. We've seen the most adoption and the best results with DSR when folks haven't made it a mandate. So when you're talking about kind of technically minded sales reps versus not, one of the things that we think is super crucial and what we've seen as a pattern is that folks that put it out as a mandate will see much slower adoption than those who say, hey, here's a tool that can be used to actually help directly impact your sales, right? This is something that you can use as a tool that will increase your sales, because we all know that the sales reps are going to make their number on, say, 20% of their accounts. Those other 80%, they're probably underserving. And so this tool enables them to scale, the sales agent to scale much more and spend more personalized time with that 80%, that long tail. And so what we've seen is that when you haven't made it a mandate and you say, hey, this is a tool that can help you, there are going to be people that are going to adopt it. And those people are going to just shoot up the leaderboard, right? We all know
Right.
sales orgs have a leaderboard of some sort that's always being tracked. And so those people that choose to use it are going to steadily climb that leaderboard. And then if you other sales reps are going to start asking, hey, what are you doing? What's working for you? And that's how you get the adoption. If you mandate it, just like, every sales rep in existence probably has been mandated a CRM change at one point in their life. And they always hate it. They always resist it. They always fight tooth and nail. And so, in order for this to not turn into shelfware, we generally recommend that folks use it as an option for their sales reps as opposed to a mandate.
How about the ability for a salesperson, like if you in a controlled, customer environment where your customers only have access to the system, it's not for the public. Are customers able to build a cart to get a quote on that? Maybe the items are customized or require like some more interaction. And so does Shopware have the ability to build a quote cart as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few things for that. We actually have within our admin right now, we have the ability to create a quote, ability to create an order. Both of those are pretty easy, straightforward in the admin. And one of the things I think is cool, like you just talked about, is that not everything is going to be a predefined SKU in your catalog, right? There might be some custom items, you might be a built to spec sort of deal. And Shopware has the ability to, inside the quote, create a custom item. And that can be positively priced, negatively priced. You kind of determine what you want the price to be in that use case. And so all of that information can be created inside Shopware. And one of the things we have too that I think is really, really cool, kind of sticking on the sales agent and making their jobs easier. We actually have a feature offering called Sales Agents, and it's a kind of a skinny down UI that's made specifically for sales agents, customer service reps, those sorts of folks, so that they don't have to log into the platform necessarily. They have a UI that's tailor built for their use cases of whatever that is. So if it's creating orders, creating quotes, approving orders, whatever the use case may be, it's a skinny down UI that's just for them to be able to use for their use cases. And the nice thing about that is you can actually, because it's all API driven, you can actually embed that into another viewport if you want. So if you have a
Right.
CRM, you can embed that so they don't have to seem to log into multiple places, right?
Yeah.
Hook it all up with SSO, and you have a unified experience that makes the sales rep slightly easier without necessarily even knowing it.
And the other part of that is like, say you're a manufacturer with some type of heavy CPQ module for configuring and quoting products. Products don't need to live necessarily in the Shopware database to be able to be added to the cart, right? So you don't need, some products might have a million different combinations between all the different fields and variant options, right? And so you don't want to have to create SKUs and variants for all that. And so being able to add an item programmatically, like configure an item and then push that into a cart is very powerful, can be very powerful as well when you're thinking about it from a B2B standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely a superpower that we have. Just thinking about the fact that neither the price nor the product necessarily needs to live inside Shopware for somebody to transact and build a cart around it is super powerful.
Yeah. So I know the product roadmap is public. Like what's coming down the pipe for 2025 from a B2B, from some things that you think will help B2B sellers using Shopware?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited. So we're coming out with slated for Q1 right now is a more complex company hierarchy structure inside Shopware. So the ability to have kind of multiple divisions and within those divisions have multiple employees and kind of the roles and permissions that exist at that. That's slated to come in Q1. For Q2 and beyond, we're looking at doing things around more customer specific catalog price books, customer specific catalogs, some more general kind of catalog restrictions and more complex pricing structures that I'm really excited about that should be coming in 2025.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Vance, I really appreciate you taking the time today to kind of break all this down. It's definitely, we have a lot of conversations with manufacturers around the country, and they're great at manufacturing their own products and selling them to their customers. What they're not as knowledgeable about often is these types of online selling systems. So coming on today to be able to talk about it, some of the great things that you're doing and where you're going was very, very helpful. So, really, really appreciate your time today in doing that. One of the things that I like to ask all our guests on the show is if you had one tip for a manufacturer to help their growth digitally in 2025, what would you recommend to them?
Yeah, I'd say that there's been this talk track around consumerization and making sure you have a portal and all that stuff, and I think that's kind of table stakes at this point. But the main piece of advice I'd have is what tools can you offer your sales reps, uh, the real money drivers behind your business? What tools can you offer them to make their lives easier and make them more productive? With the advent of AI and all the things we've seen in that space, uh, how can we make them more effective, and how can we upskill your sales reps so that they're able to be more productive and help make more for you?
It's awesome. That's awesome. It's great advice. It's great advice. Well, folks, thank you for listening in. Wherever you're listening to this, please give us a subscribe, leave us some star ratings, leave us a comment. We love your feedback. Vance, I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join the podcast and share all your insights and knowledge about all things e-commerce today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ethan. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, we'll see you on the next episode.